Good morning, everyone. I am here today with Christa Cardwell to talk about a really important topic, staging, which is something that's becoming more and more, I think, important now, just with where we are in the market. Christa and I go way back. We have been good friends since over 10 years ago when I used to sit at the front desk in the South End. But I'd love for you to introduce yourself.
My name is Christa Cardwell. I'm an agent at Gibson in the South End, and now a sales agent and stager with my partner Josh Trin. We have a company called Pretty City, and we've been doing both, staging our units to prepare them for sale.
I love that, yeah. I love both you and Josh. Maybe we'll have him on sometime.
Oh, you should, yes.
Real Estate After Dark, I think.
He's very funny. Yeah, Real Estate After Dark would be good.
Awesome. Well, yeah, I'm really excited to jump in today, so let's do that.
Okay.
We hate to be cliche and be like, oh, the market's shifting, but at the same time, that's what started this conversation between us. I've always loved your design, like first and foremost. I mean, I've been in your house. I've seen your, just your desk, your office. There's like a nice vibe to it that I think is actually like really interesting compared to other ways of staging. I always kind of liken it to makeup in my mind. Like if you have so much makeup on that people are just looking like, wow, even if it looks good, it's like your makeup looks good, not like your face looks good. Yeah. You don't want someone to come in your house and be like, your staging looks good. You want them to feel like somebody just feel at home when you get there, which I feel like really is your style, which we can get into. But without being cliche and talking about that shifting market, I think that really is why this topic came up between us, because everything, all the tools in the toolbox, like haven't been sharpened because the market was moving so fast. And this is just something to really start to think about. And we hope that this is something that might be helpful for people to send to their clients at the end, when you can kind of just give everyone an idea of like, is it worth it? You know, do people always see the return on staging? So without getting too into it, can you talk us through just like what's the goal of home staging and styling?
Well, I think that the goal can change property to property and situation to situation. Some places people have their own fantastic style. They've worked with their specific space through the years. Things fit properly, the colors are right. But everybody accumulates their stuff and their things they're very personal items, and some of it's just not highly functional. It's more decorative, it's taking up space. So you want to place to photograph well first. That's going to get people in the door. And then once they're in the door, you want them to be able to move around. Imagine themselves in the space, but not be, in the city, it's about size. It's about the square footage. So you want to maximize the room and make sure that people can be comfortable. So with each property, it can change. Sometimes we'll come into places where they're very well designed, but they just need to be depersonalized and decluttered and just sort of, adjusted a little bit. Mm-hmm. Then there's the places that just have too much stuff and you just need to, find a storage unit, clear out a bunch of pieces, accessorize a little, adjust some placement and maybe hang some different art. And then there's the empty unit that just needs every single inch of it covered. So with each of those scenarios, the process and the goal is the same at the end. The approach is different. And when you're dealing with somebody's things and depersonalization, you don't want to insult anybody. Right. So you have to, it's a delicate dance to have that conversation and to explain why you need to do what you need to do. And as long as you say that carefully, you can keep the insults to the minimum. Some people take it personally no matter what. The empty unit is the most fun to do. You can really take a look at a space and maximize every corner of it and think, who's this buyer? Who will the buyer probably be? Based on size of the unit, price of the unit, location of the unit, design accordingly. And it usually, it works. That's the person it attracts.
Right. That's what I was just going to ask you. You kind of went through what buyers are looking for in the presentation of the home when you're doing this. I think you are doing primarily urban, which I think would probably be more challenging. And that's so you sort of alluded to what you need to do is give them the imagination that they really don't have, right? Think about. Right. But do you shift based on prospective buyers? Like when you're staging a specific unit, if you think there's a specific type of buyer, are you shifting with that?
Yes, you can sort of get an idea of who your buyer probably will be based on a couple of things. The full service, high-end buildings are probably not attracting first-time home buyers. You know, you're looking at in Boston and in the South End specifically where we work, you've got 700 square foot floor throughs, 2 bedrooms, but they're really 1.5. And that is going to attract a younger, maybe single, maybe a couple, maybe they have a small dog, you know, and you want to set it up so for that, either a single individual or a couple with a home office, with a chill, you know, place to watch TV, a nice little kitchen to have your friends over, like just sort of support that lifestyle with art that's a little more, you know, cool and less, you know, not sophisticated, but just sort of, I don't want to say old, but you know what I mean, like a little more, less fancy, a little more hip. And you just sort of, you cover all that ground to attract a younger person right from the photographs. You know, they almost look at it like, wow, that's the lifestyle I want, and so I'm going to purchase that, and maybe I will be, you know, I will live that life that, you know, looks so cool in the photos and when you get in there. And again, with with a different unit in a different building with a doorman and an elevator and more full service, you have to go with a more traditional conservative look that's going to attract maybe empty nesters, or, you know, people that are downsizing, or people that maybe it's a pied-à-terre and they're not having their friends over. They just need a place to come and live their urban life when they're here comfortably and
feet up,
but if they're used to a 3,000 or 4,000 square foot home in the suburbs and now they're moving into 1,000 square feet, you have to show them that they can do that. They can have a dining table and still have their kids home for Thanksgiving. You got to show them how to work that space.
Right.
Looking at an empty space, it's very hard for people to imagine all that stuff.
It looks bigger.
It can look smaller.
I know, so that's what I meant. Like with furniture, it looks bigger. I think people are usually shocked when the unit's empty.
Yeah, and the number of square footage, like 600 square feet in one particular building on a certain floor with a certain height of a ceiling and a size of a window, can look, you know, much bigger than 600 square feet garden level with just 2 windows out the back. So a lot of things come into play, and people, not everybody can walk in and say, oh, my little section will definitely fit in that corner.
Right.
So you got to show them that it can.
Yeah, you have to make them like picture themselves there. It's funny, I thought of you last week. I walked through one of our agents in the suburbs was doing a broker open. I could tell it was staged. It was in the suburbs. It was a big, like 100% a family home, if you're going to generalize and assume who's probably going to move into it. Just a lot of bedrooms and things for people without kids. And there was so much staging around like storage space. It looked really good, but you could tell that the person was thinking like, let me show people how to put away all of the cleats, toys, like, and still make it look nice in here, because that's going to be what I have kids. Like, I'm going to think of when I walk in a house, like if something's beautiful, but I'm just picturing like my life exploding into that. So it is, it's basically, there's a functionality to it too. I have to be able to picture like, how's my life going to look in here? Because you do a beautiful job, but if I walked into that 600 square foot, you know, beautiful artwork and all that, I would know that this is not going to look like this the second I get here, which you know from experience.
I have people ask me all the time, oh, should I clear out the closets? And to a point, yes. If your life has exploded in your closet, yes, clean it out. But don't clear it out. Don't take everything out. Show people that you can fit a ton of stuff in that closet, especially in small city dwellings where that is so precious.
The other thing I love that you do is the patios. I feel like a lot of people leave out the outdoor space, and it's like so critical. And you take a lot of time to stage the outdoor space. That's everything in the city.
And I know that everybody, you know, rediscovered their outdoor spaces during COVID. I was always an outdoor space person. I spend the majority of my time at home on my patio playing backgammon. Literally, spring. Well, even in the winter. I even do it in the winter, but spring, summer, and fall. So I think it's very important. And it is an extension of the living area. When you have 700 square feet, to have an extra 150 is a dream come true.
My college apartment in the North End, I always drive by. We're 5 of us in there, and I see the fire escape. The fire escape was just literally fire escape, but it was one of those like with the stairs. And it was like our deck. we would just climb out the window and hang out there, like you said, all seasons.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not going to be something you stage, but truly it's part of the living space.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I love that you do that.
Yeah.
So this is kind of a goofy question, but I feel like you can always answer things interestingly because that's what you do. Do you have any specific success stories from staging?
To be honest, everything that, so Josh is my partner in Pretty City, and we think that all of our stories are success stories, but some more dramatic than others. You know, some offers, you know, much higher than others and faster than others. I mean, that's the ultimate goal is, you know, to maximize the price and minimize the time on the market. That's always the goal. And, you know, yes, you might need a couple of weeks or a month before listing to make sure you can do all that. A lot of units you need to start with, you know, a massive cleaning. You need windows professionally washed. You need paint. You need to sometimes change out, you know, everything from countertops and hardware and faucets and even door knobs and door hinges. Like a lot of that stuff, it goes unnoticed for many years until the place is empty and you're really thinking about presenting it to other people. And then all of a sudden, like the old door hinges that have been painted over years and have, you know, that just looks horrible. So you need all this prep work, and then you do go in and you stage it. The idea is to do it fast. So whatever time you need to get there, I'm sure most sellers are like, let's go, I want to get it on the market. Then when you get it on, you want everybody to come in, and you want your magic buyer to be in there day one and to move through the transaction process. Some of our stories have been, you know, quicker than others, and units that had more dramatic befores versus their afters. I mean, I think that's where the real success is measured, like whoa, it doesn't even look like the same place. It's unbelievable. And then you and I were talking last week about a sort of reverse success story where we had a unit come on a couple of weeks ago that hadn't been touched in 20 years. The buyer bought it 20 years ago. He lived in it for 20 years. He had his own situation. He was a musician. He had this brown carpet on the beautiful wood floors to act as a sound barrier. The kitchen tile was like hilarious. Like you couldn't even call it retro anymore. It was just so ugly. It was funny. And I thought, well, if we come in here and stage this and we try to hide this stuff, it's going to look like we're just trying to hide this stuff. And so instead, we decided to not stage it and leave it as this blank canvas and market it as a blank canvas and even write about it as a blank canvas. In our description, that was the first line, that's what this is. And we had so many people through the open house, and by the end of the second open house on Sunday, we had 7 offers over asking.
I love that story.
Yeah, so sometimes the best staging, story or success is not staging.
Knowing when to and
yeah, it's not, I mean, that was a unique situation, right. But, have the conversation with whoever you're working with and make sure that the plan is the right plan. I think that's really what it is. You can't just go in there and throw a bunch of gray stuff from Home Goods and call it staging. That needs to stop. No one wants to look at it anymore, and it doesn't serve the purpose. It doesn't work. It looks like staging. And I think that the biggest compliment that Josh and I have ever gotten is when people come through, especially agents, and say, "Is this staged?" And right. That's the best thing we could ever hear. We don't right. want it to look like staging. We want it to look like someone actually lives there.
Because that immediately makes people more attracted to the property.
I mean, it gives them that emotional connection you want them to have. You want them to have that with your buyer. If you want them emotionally connected right from the get-go. That's right. going to assure that they make it all the way to the closing table, mm-hmm. that there's no second thoughts. When they literally fall in love with the property right when they walk in the door, you're in good shape. But so I think staging helps that.
So you kind of led into this question, but walk me through staging, regular staging versus virtual staging, because I know that that's become popular in the last few years. And I think I know what your answer is going to be. But.
Yeah, I mean, I have thoughts on it. I understand it. I appreciate the technology. I think it's cool. I think that buyers can be disappointed when they see it virtually. Not all buyers can recognize when something's virtually staged. We can, because now we've seen it a lot. You can tell. It's just something the way it floats and the way it almost looks. You can see that it almost looks drawn, but buyers can't tell that. And then they walk in and they're almost confused. You can see it on their, when I take my buyers into a property that has been virtually staged and that's the way they've seen it, they're disappointed that it isn't, that they're not going to have that sort of 3D experience when they're in it. So
it's almost like you're setting the bar higher before you walk in. Because I do think that people, when they buy a staged property, especially staged well, like something that you've staged, it feels like home. I do think, and it's okay because it comes around, but it's like it's shocking when you walk in the day that you're closing to the empty unit. So picture that feeling your first viewing of the property. I mean, virtual staging is a decent option. Obviously, it's more economic. If somebody had to do it, say there was a time constraint or a money constraint, I don't think it's a horrible option.
Right.
I'm not, like I said, I do appreciate, like you said, I appreciate the technology piece of it. Yeah. But I've recently seen a lot of people are virtually staging. It's almost like staging is this like knee-jerk reaction when something's not moving. And virtual staging definitely has turned, so sometimes people put it on, it's not staged, and then like randomly a couple weeks in, they get like anxious, or the seller gets anxious, and they virtually stage a few rooms and throw those pictures in too. So you're like, what am I looking at? I see one living room, then another living room, those two living rooms. That I think we should definitely not do. It's got to be one or the other. It's either completely virtually staged, and it's noted that it's virtually staged. We can't have 3 living rooms all with different furniture.
No, it is. It's very confusing because, you know, people, unfortunately, and especially when people are on a real estate search and they're really sort of frantically looking at everything they can see online, they're not reading the small print that says rooms are virtually staged or photographs are of both virtual and empty. So you have to really keep the audience in mind and who's really, what they're taking in and what the result is going to be, because the point is with those photographs is to get people in the door. Everybody in the door, every potential buyer in the door, and the photographs
are being on a dating app with your high school picture as your.
Listen, when we talked about doing this, I want you to do one of these podcasts all about real estate and dating and all of the similarities, because there's so many, and this is another one of them.
Too much makeup.
One thing on the virtual staging where I thought it was done really well. It was an agent in our Back Bay office had a listing in the Back Bay on Fairfield Street. It was a couple years ago, and one of the bedrooms had a really ugly, very large ceiling fan, and she had the guys at Remark, or whoever did it, they took out the ceiling fan, and I thought that was brilliant. She didn't have an electrician in or anybody or handyman in to take it out. It was still there when you came in, but it was one of those things that was like the only thing you saw, and it could be a turnoff to people. I've had buyers be like, from the paint color to things like light fixtures, and they don't realize that you can change that very easily.
That's a good point. That's a good way to use it.
I feel like there's some small edits that can work to show people what the potential is without going overboard and really, showing them something that they're just not going to see when they walk in.
Just like this is an easy, because I'm someone that admittedly doesn't have that. That's why I'm in awe of like the vision that you have, because I need someone else to like show me what the space could be. So that's why I think this is so powerful, and I think it's actually like one of the best tools you can have. So we gotta hopefully convince everyone that they should be doing this. Can you walk me through just relatively what's the cost on all of this, and maybe we can compare that to the return, because I do believe that you see it.
And again, all those sort of different levels of staging have different costs associated. From the decluttering to the having to pull some stuff and rent a storage space and maybe pull more stuff in, and then from the empty unit from the ground up. All of those things have different prices. But National Association of Realtors puts an average of 1% of your sale price or your list price. Just sort of factor that in as your cost. So there can be, depending on who you work with, there are companies that do the organization for you and will come in and organize your closets and organize your, everything, your countertops, and do the decluttering and the depersonalization for you, or you can spend a weekend doing it yourself, so you can save a cost there.
Sure.
As far as the staging companies come, if they're going to spend their time and use their creative skills to use what you have, they're going to probably charge you an hourly rate to do that. If you have to pull things out, a storage unit costs something depending on how big it is. Moving that stuff from the unit to the storage unit and maybe back or wherever else you're going. And then in the case of from the ground up, obviously you're going to pay your stagers. They're going to do it's more time, so more money per hour, and then rental furniture and rental product to fill in the blanks. So it does vary, but National Association of Realtors says 1%. And I think that's a safe equation because we've never had to go over that for anything we've 1%. Done.
That's a great number. I didn't know that beforehand. I like that.
And in our market in the city, that's relative to the size of your unit, your price.
What do you think, I'm putting you on the spot, but like relative on that, if you compare the percentage, like what do you think you're getting over?
It depends on, if a unit is in a like a really, tough location or something, you're going to have challenges that not even staging can fix. But if your property's priced well and the market and the timing is right, it's not January 2nd when you put it on the market, and you're priced well, your timing's good, and you do everything you need to do for marketing, proper photographs and getting it online at the right time. I do think that you can see in the markets that we've just been in right now, I think you see, anywhere from 5% to 15 to 20%.
Yeah. I think it makes a world of a difference, truly. Yeah, so I feel like we've covered a lot. I do agree with you that I think that the return, I personally had you stage my unit. We had I think at the time, like a 4-month-old, a geriatric bulldog. It was like it wasn't anything that we could do to make it a better living situation. We took everything out. And we had one of those, like, they'd call it 2 beds, but probably 1 plus, garden level, great starter, great patio. And that's why I knew you staged a patio so well. But I think that that's really why I feel so passionately about, and I've done like 7 real estate transactions in my lifetime personally. And I know for a fact, and 2 of them were investment units, and both of those would have gone quickly if they staged it. You actually staged one of them after the fact when we sold it. And I look at a small space and I'm like, that's why I got lucky on my first one and got it, because no one could use their imagination. It looked too small. And I just knew from being in the industry that it was a good investment.
Right.
But I think when it comes to small spaces and especially urban, like anything really in the city, so I'd love if you could talk me through like some of that too, just like doing mine. I think that should speak for itself. I felt like we should definitely touch on that.
Yeah, well, I remember when I first came to your Union Park place, and Lindsay he might have been less than 4
saw
months.
the picture of you holding him. He was like 3 months old.
Yeah, and like anything, even if you were in a 4,000 square foot house, you were going to have stuff everywhere. I mean, there was no time to put things away.
Right.
So
or place to put them.
Yeah, and I think then you had that challenge of having no place. And so at the time you said, what should we leave? What should we take? And I just said, let's get it all out of here.
Right. I think we left the island stools. That was about all that you did.
Yeah. And I swapped those out. I actually used your stools you had at another place that I was staging, and used some other ones for the actual presentation of yours. But we started from scratch. We knew that the same person that was buying that unit was going to be you and Mike 4 years ago, like we knew that was going to be the same, and it was.
And I actually felt bad because it looked so good. I was like, oh my God, what are they going to say when they walk in, like for the final walkthrough?
The final walkthrough can be very nerve-wracking for that very reason.
Yeah. But again, I think it's good to see what it could be. Yeah. Like they got to see like all these ideas that a designer had. Yeah. So you just kind of go with that, I think. But I truly, I think that was a good example, because it's like, I really believe in having bought places and feeling like I think I did well on that because it wasn't staged.
Yeah.
You don't want someone to feel like that when you're on the sell side.
No.
And so I think that it's just a good example of you should never not be staging. It should just be automatic. Yeah. And you should be staging right.
Yeah. I mean, it is like anything. I mean, you just, and right out of the gate was the first impression is the most important. You have got to present it in those photos as best you can, because I don't know what the stats are on that, but I would say that it's in the 90 percentile, that's where people are seeing the property first. You know, online, in photos that they can zoom in on, they're really seeing it, and they're making the decision if they're going to put it on their list,
Right.
To come to the open house or schedule a showing, and that's your make or break moment. And
Right.
so those photos are really important. And I think that certain colors photograph better, certain placements photograph better. You know, depending on where you put your little apartment size sectional, it can either make the room look bigger or smaller. You know, I mean, I think all those things come into play.
I love that you do both, because it's almost like when there's two sides of it, the other one can point to the other one, right? Like, not to say they always would, and everybody can work well as a team, but you staging is directly then impacting you selling the place. I always think about, like, when there's two parties involved, this is a weird example, but like my whole life I had like a knee issue. Basically, I had rheumatoid arthritis, so I had like a rheumatologist and then I had a surgeon. And it always felt like, even when I was a kid, I always felt like they were each pointing to the other one. Well, if he changed the medicine or if he did surgery, it's like, oh my God, I wish one of you just did both, so we could. And that's how I feel like if you have a separate stager and then you have a separate agent, the stager can be like, well, it looks beautiful. It must be something that they did. But you're doing both, which I think is really effective. And you've obviously, then you have the experience on the sales side to know, like, what you just said, like the littlest things. Oh, we should put that color. We should do this. This didn't work. Like, you're seeing experiencing the open houses and what people are saying. Which makes a huge difference.
I will toot my own horn and play off of that point. One more time, I'll toot my own horn. One client that Josh and I staged for a couple years ago in the South End on Chandler Street, when the sellers saw their photographs, they literally said the place had never looked as good. The whole time, they had lived there for like 8 or 9 years. They couldn't believe it was the same place, and then they hired us to do the interior design for their new place that they bought after they sold that.
So that place I walked through right when we were having you stage ours. And we were on that fence of like wanting to stay in the city for other reasons. We didn't, but you had staged it. They had children, and again, functionality that hit me, because if I had walked into that and you had a home office in there, and that's just speaking, it's the staging speaking to the buyer, right? There was bunk beds, there was little desks, and I was like, oh, kids in the city, and that was in my mind at the time, because that's what I needed for my family. So it is a good point. Like, you're staging for who's looking at the property.
The person who bought that didn't have children. Maybe they will in that unit. When my clients bought that, now it's been like 10 years ago, she was expecting twins, and they wanted that lower level because she knew she was having twins, and they stayed there. They raised those kids. They were 8 or 9 when they left there, and they had those cool bunks with the little desks underneath. They were kind of like college lofty things, but for little kids.
Feels like you can't overdo on that piece. Like, someone not having kids, it's not going to be a turn off to see the kids' bedroom, because you're like, oh, I can make that into whatever I want.
Totally.
But if you have something that you don't see space for, like a kid,
you're
like, I don't think that's going to work for me.
No, that was an interesting one, and that was another situation where we used a lot of their stuff. We just brought our own piece. We moved they had a bookcase in their bedroom that we brought out into the dining room and made it like a china cabinet and bar, and we changed their artwork and added throw pillows and rugs, and that was like the middle level that we talked about. That was what we did there, and it worked well.
Cool. I love it. I don't think I have any other questions for you. Do you have anything you want to leave us with?
No, I mean, I think all of the points we just made. I think it's a smart idea. When it's right to do it, it's worth it. The seller will benefit.
Absolutely.
If you don't do it when you need to, the buyer will probably benefit.
Right.
And then, like that example I used from a couple of weeks ago, the unit that was, just needed a complete overhaul. It was nowhere near move-in ready. Then let's not pretend it is. Let's just leave it as is, as a blank canvas, and celebrate that and market it that. So there, I guess we can leave with, there are times, as few as they may be, that it's not a good idea, but for the most part, it's going to be the right thing to do, and you should allow yourself enough time to do it.
And it's getting more and more important again. So it's a good time to be talking about it.
That's what I think.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. We're again here with Christa Cardwell, and if you want to reach Christa, you can feel free to reach out to me, Nicole@gibsonsarah.com, and I will put you directly in touch. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.